In this lecture, we are going to be talking about depression. It is one of the biggest problems that we face on a daily basis, and it is one of the main mental health problems that people suffer from. Now, rational emotive behavior therapy can give us a guide, some coping mechanisms to deal with depression properly. We're going to talk about two concepts: the humor mechanism and the shame reinforcing mechanism. Depression is usually triggered by certain events and certain things that happens in our daily life. Now, of course, depression can appear out of nowhere. A lot of people suffering from clinical depression need to seek professional help. However, we can always use rational emotive behavior therapy as a coping mechanism to certain events that can trigger depressive episodes. Let's take an example to explain the humor mechanism. You had a course and it was tough. You got a really bad grade on the course and you weren't expecting it. Now, a lot of people through this event would start developing feelings and emotions that will lead them to develop depression. They will get depressed because of the results of their exam. And this happened with me. I felt so bad when I got a really bad grade on one of my courses. But I decided to use REBT to my advantage, and especially the humor mechanism. I asked my friends how they did, and they all laughed. They were like, "We did not do well at all, we screwed up," and I looked at myself. I was putting myself under tremendous pressure and falling into depression, while my friends took it more on the humorous side. They were laughing about it. They were laughing about how everybody did not do well, how everybody screwed up in this course. Now, I'm not saying you should not take this bad grade seriously. You should indeed take it seriously and work harder on improving your grades in the next semester. However, looking down on yourself, putting yourself under tremendous pressure, and falling into depression will not change the fact that you got a bad grade on this course. So how about, instead of dwelling on it, you use the humor mechanism? Just like when my friends were laughing about it and making jokes out of it, you start making jokes out of it. But keep yourself accountable. Keep yourself accountable rationally, knowing that you will study harder and you will get better grades. But going into this detrimental stream of thoughts that will put you down and get you through depression, falling into depressive episodes and feeling bad and feeling sad, it is not going to help. It is not going to change your grade. It will just be bad for your mental health. So when I started laughing at myself and my friends about how we all got a bad grade, my perspective changed. My mentality changed. I stopped feeling sad. I stopped feeling depressed. And I started feeling a bit more optimistic. That even though it did not go according to plan, it is not the end of the world. We laughed about it, but I made sure to hold myself accountable on a rational basis, to work harder without falling into the void of depression. You've probably seen the following scenario. Somebody's feeling down, sad, depressed, and they meet one of their friends, and their friends try as hard as possible to make them smile and make them laugh. It is an instinctive behavior for us when we see somebody who's feeling down to surround them with emotions linked to joy, happiness, which can be projected through laughter and humor. And we can use the sense of humor to cheer somebody up. So why not use our personal sense of humor on an individualistic basis to help ourselves cope with depression? As we said, rationally speaking, you cannot change what happened, and dwelling upon it, falling into this depressive episode, will not help. But being optimistic, adopting the humor mechanism, and getting out of it rationally and happily can help you cope with the problem properly, making sure that you hold yourself accountable to do all the necessary actions and change that you need to do. Now, talking about shame reinforcing, going back to our example, when we fail a course, we might start to feel bad, we might start to feel depressed, not just because we failed on a personal level, but we are also worried about how other people will look at us, what our friends will say, what our siblings will say, what our parents will say, and this anxiousness can develop into depression when we don't find an answer of how to cope with it and how to deal with the shame that we're going to feel. This shame that is formed by an internal mechanism where you're exposed and humiliated can often lead us to depression, as we said before. Oftentimes, when we take an example of somebody who is not satisfied with the way they physically look, whether they're too skinny or they're overweight, this might make them feel depressed because their body image is not just unsatisfactory on a personal level, but they also feel shame when it comes to other people looking at their physical image. But what happens when you act based on this shamefulness in public, defying what other people think and what other people will say and how they will react? Once you do so, the first automatic reaction is self-acceptance. Because once you do it, you should be on a comfortable enough level to accept yourself, to expose yourself in front of the situation that you were scared of when it comes to shame. This is highly correlated with the humor reinforcing technique. You make out of the shameful factor a humorous situation. I'll give you an example that I experienced personally. One of my friends was diagnosed with a disease where he grew up with no hair on his head. He was bald throughout his childhood, and this is a lingering problem that he's going to face throughout his life. Now, if we imagine somebody growing up with no hair, obviously, a lot of people might laugh at the situation. A lot of people might say things and act in certain ways where this individual will start feeling shame about it. But when I met him and we started to get closer, he started making jokes about it. He said, "Feel free to make jokes about my bald head." He said, "People call me Mr. Clean." He exposed this shameful factor to his social circle by accepting it and emphasizing that it is not something he is ashamed of. And once he accepted himself, other people automatically accepted him. So by using those two methods, you can be looking into using some rational emotive behavior therapy systems that can help you to a certain extent to deal with depression and depressive episodes.